Enes Kanter just casually walking off the court in a face covered with blood. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and this is your #1 source for learning about the medical side of sports. This injury looks a lot scarier than it actually is, but there is some potential for it to have been more traumatic, and we'll talk about that in this video. If you're new here and you enjoy learning about this side of sports, then please consider subscribing to my channel, and let's take a look at what happened with Enes Kanter. So Kanter falls victim to some friendly fire here. We can see as he's going up for this rebound, basically just gets hit in the side of the head with an elbow from his own teammate here. Totally incidental contact, but of course left Kanter pretty beat up and bloody. Part of what made this so bad and allowed that laceration or cut to form on Kanter's eye was because the part of Covington's body that hit him was specifically the more firm kind of bump of the elbow called the olecranon, where you basically have just one really hard surface without much padding that's gonna shear across another surface without much padding, Kanter's eye. Let's take a look one more time here. Kanter goes up for the rebound and bam, just right there, gets hit with this kind of glancing blow from Covington's elbow. And then we see Kanter just basically walk off the court like it's no big deal. I mean, I figured someone would at least like get him a towel to like wipe his face off as he's coming off the court, but nah, just walks off like it's nothing. You can see here where that gash was in the eye where he kind of got that elbow. Thankfully, though, we saw him return to the game basically with what looks like probably some stitches under there, combined with these little adhesive strips called steri strips. If we look at our biodigital anatomy tool, there is potential for something like this to be more severe. Here, of course, if we're looking at the side where Kanter would have been hurt, we have to really think about this kind of orbital rim, all of these bones that kind of go around our eye socket, because you can suffer a fracture to these orbital bones when you have something like a direct trauma from an elbow. Basically all these different bones, including the frontal bone, the ethmoid bone that sits in here, the sphenoid bone, all these different bones kind of come together to form this orbital area. And a fracture to any of those bones would be considered an orbital fracture. You, of course, have your eyeball in here. You've got your optic nerve, all the different muscles that control your eye movements. So we do have to take injuries to the eye socket pretty seriously to make sure that you've got full range of motion of your eyes, that you don't have any kind of swelling or entrapment in there, and certainly don't have any injury to the eye itself. But you can feel on yourself, basically there's just essentially skin that's overlying that bony prominence here on that kind of orbital ridge. So you've got the hard part of the ulna, the olecranon process here at the back, basically again, minimal padding with just the skin, making contact and shearing across another surface with minimal protection, and that causes enough shear to basically tear the skin. It's not like a knife that just cuts through, it's basically the skin gets so much friction and shear that it tears, causing that bleeding. Scalp injuries also are notorious for just bleeding a lot. It's a very well vascularized area, so it oftentimes looks a lot worse than it actually is. I gotta give him credit for whoever kind of repaired this up. That's a really delicate area to try to throw in some sutures, especially just back in the locker room. These little adhesive strips we have here are something called steri strips. It's basically a more sterile way to put some additional protection and kind of close that gap where the incision or the wound is. That's more beneficial than just putting in the stitches. It's hard to tell if there's stitches beneath here or not. I bet there probably is at least one or two, but these steri strips can stay on place to help provide some additional support and protection to let Kanter get back in the game. So certainly a much worse looking injury than it actually is, but when we see these things as the medical staff, we've got to think through all these different scenarios to make sure that it really is something just minor and that we don't have to deal with a more severe underlying eye injury or orbital bone injury. If that contact from Covington would have been just on a slightly different spot of his arm, so basically higher up along the tricep, lower down around the forearm, you probably wouldn't have had that blood, that laceration to Kanter's face. It's really because it's that really hard focal point of the olecranon right there on the tip that makes contact. So a couple inches in another direction, this doesn't happen, really just a bad luck kind of fluke sort of play that comes with playing a contact sport. That's it for the video though, everybody. Thank you as always for watching. Hope you learned something here. Let me know any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later.